All right. Hello, hello. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're tuning in from. This is the Intentional Beacon podcast. Gifty Annie, your host, your mentor. Again, just to remind you, this platform is a platform where we shine light on the power of intentionality and authenticity. What do I mean by that? I mean, we have the opportunity to celebrate our guests' unique stories about how they have navigated life challenges with clarity, purpose, to make a difference in their areas of expertise. And today, I am honored to have our guest with us this evening to share his unique story. I'm going to allow his name is James Wilkinson. And it's an honor to have him. I've been connected with him. I'm blessed to connect with him through the Public Speaking Academy. And so it is a delight to have him to come and share his unique story and his journey in how he has actually been authentic in living his optimum life. He's a coach to entrepreneur, transformational coach. But I'm going to allow him the opportunity to introduce himself to you as our audience, how he would like you to know him. And thank you so much for tuning in. And I hope you are going to be inspired and educated, empowered with the wisdom that our guest is going to share at this time. Thank you. So, James, it is a joy to have you. Welcome to the Intentional Beacon podcast. And so, without taking much time, I'm going to please introduce yourself to our audience in terms of how you would like them to know you and briefly give us some background. Thank you.
Thank you, Gifty. It's an absolute honor to be here. As we met at PSA, and our conversations I always appreciated and still do, and here we are with another fantastic conversation, hopefully.
Thank you.
Um, my background is music for the last sort of 35 years. I was a professional trumpeter, and I got into I got into coaching really by accident. And now my expertise really is that I hypnotize entrepreneurs and creatives into really believing they can achieve anything. And of course, doing that through a truthful and authentic, intentional way. My beginnings started I think, really in 2000. I'd already been playing as a professional trumpeter for about 10 years, maybe a bit longer, and I lost the ability to play. So I stepped off the main stages at Glastonbury Festival, which was obviously a big show, and off the stages in the classical realm and also in the jazz realm, and decided what was I to do with my life. I'd always had the idea that whenever you're gifted with something, that you should always try and reach down and help others up. And I always enjoyed, if you were to read my personality on any of these tests, you'd see me as the chronic helper, someone who. So I just love nothing more than to really help my clients to sort of get to the next level, to realize actually their power, and also that some of the things that they think are important can be stripped away, really to allow their true essence to shine through. So I accidentally got together with a musician which I was helping, probably around 2007-8, and he was a life coach, and I was so skeptical about this stuff. I thought I thought it was making money. I didn't know. I thought it was almost con artistry. I
Yes.
really was so skeptical about this sort of thing. I come from a background which is musical but also scientific. My parents
Yeah,
worked
yeah.
for the NHS,
Wow.
which is a tough world, and
Mm.
I'd seen what real healers and change makers do. And so someone who was sashaying around, in a smart suit as a life coach, I really thought that was something that was, a bit sort of simple in comparison in life. But when I got to realize with this guy, we did an exchange. He was also a musician, a fantastic musician, actually.
Okay.
He's just won a lot of awards for some of his film music.
Mm.
Um, but I decided that I would actually look at helping him with his music, and he said he would give me some coaching. So I thought, well, why not? We worked out that our fees structure was roughly the same, and we did a sort of exchange in kind. Um, that sort of what I thought was going to be a little bit of a joke and possibly a waste of time for me culminated in me with him running
Mm.
for 2 years in central London. We ran a thing called Super Quantum Light Field, which was basically
Wow.
all about intuition, neuroscience, coaching, and I realized there was depth to it,
Mm.
and that was great fun. And we ran that out of the House of St Barnabas, which is a homeless charity, which my friend also did a lot of coaching. So some of the coaching he
Mm.
did was for a lot of those things. So and I kind of got the bug, to be honest. I got the bug
Mm.
for coaching, so I kept it as a side hustle for years,
Wow.
and now I've in the last, I guess, since COVID, I've been stepping into the light where I can, helping where I
Mm.
can. It was COVID really, I think, that kind of pushed me into actually doing a lot more of this work and getting a bit
Mm.
more serious about it, because the music industry dialed down, and
Mm.
of course, um, the world was in crisis. So I was able to use some of my gifts just to help people really, and to help entrepreneurs navigate, uh, you know, some of the murk that they were in and some of the chaos that the world was in, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I found that I
Mm.
really enjoyed it.
Wow. 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 That is truly inspiring. I mean, that is also very extensive journey because
Mm,
in terms of your input and your background as a musician with the
mm,
opportunity to meet, I'm sure, celebrities and the key people, and all of a sudden you have to think about entrepreneurs who are in
mm,
businesses, and I guess every gift can be translated into business, and that you are rightly so. If it is a musician, somebody wanting to know much about music, you can coach the person. So it is endless, but your story is truly inspiring. And from what you've just shared, you've touched on what inspired you to shift from musical to coaching and empowering entrepreneurs to live authentic and optimum life. Just to check with you, can you shed light on your personal uh, definition or what you mean by, how would you define authentic life, the experience of authentic life so that we move on to the
yeah, of
meeting.
course. Of course, I mean it's a thing that's being bounced around a lot now. People talk about being more authentic. Everybody's looking at their truth, but for me, that it's on two levels. It goes quite spiritually deep, and then it also goes on a level of real world practice and reality. So for me, I guess it's like taking off the masks. We all wear different masks. We might wear our work mask. We might wear our family mask.
Yes.
We
Mm.
might wear our mask for our mother-in-law. We might wear our
Yes.
mask,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever. We all have our
Mm.
different masks, okay, that we
Mm.
wear. And it really is about, can we take off that mask? Can we allow that soul essence, that pure
Wow.
essence, and this is where we get spiritual, with that essence that was before the ego was built, in our early years, between our sort of, 3 to 7 years old, that little spark. Can we allow that to shine through? Can we allow
Yeah.
the learnings of our life to now without the ego? I'm not saying that we get rid of the ego. I think it's useful, and I'll possibly touch on that later if I'm allowed. But really, it's about dissolving the different personas we show to the world,
Yeah.
um, and allowing us to just be the real you, really. And when you are
Yeah.
the real you in every single situation, whether it is at work, with your friends, or with your mother-in-law, and you're the same person, that really is liberating, because then you're not
Yeah.
acting, you're not living
Mm,
any kind
mm,
of lie. You don't need to
mm,
remember who you are with who. You just are you. And I think a lot of
mm,
people are, it takes a lot of confidence to do that,
yeah.
in your ability to know that you will be loved in all of those
Mm,
situations.
yeah. Yeah. That is deep. That is really deep because even though you're simplifying it, what I heard you saying, to be true to yourself and behave in a consistent manner to your
Hmm. Hmm.
values. And again, I do agree with you how we can present ourselves in different sectors differently. If at
Mm.
work, I mean the bosses, how do I, stay true to my values at the same time, be free. And I like the word you use, liberated,
Hmm.
being vulnerable
Hmm.
and transparent is not an easy thing for many. And
Yeah.
I thank you for sharing that. You've simplified it, and I'm sure it will stay with our listeners and myself. Be yourself, but at the same time without fear of judgment by
Mm.
others. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. And so this one, we move on to as a coach, transformational coach for entrepreneurs whom
Hmm.
you see. What are some of the patterns of behaviors or the thought processes that they present to you? Because your aim is to support them to be themselves, bring out the best out of them, and shine. And that
Mm.
can be a very, deep work. Let me put it.
Mm.
Somebody say you have to, show your nakedness, and that can be very tough for many of us. And so, what are some of the things, are brought to your attention as a transformational coach where you support people to be authentic in reality? Mm.
Well, for me, I think it's how people really define. How do you define life?
Yeah.
I think that seems to be the issue. Um, if you define life negatively, when you're describing the world or how you feel, or what has happened in the past, whether it's traumatic or not. But if you look back at it with negative filter, I suppose, and you make the source of everything that you feel, external. So you look for external happiness. You look
Yeah.
for that sort of thing. And people end up sort of losing themselves in all this external validation,
Yeah.
people pleasing,
Yeah.
and I think then there's a grief. I think when we
Yeah.
hide behind these masks, as I discussed earlier, the it's, and when I say grief, it's a grief for the life they're not living.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm a
Mm.
real big believer that
Mm.
most
Mm.
things are just as they are. They just as they are.
Mm. Mm.
And most, I like being true to what's called the I am. So,
Mm.
seeing an isness of everything as it is, and what I commonly see, I suppose, with past trauma, uh, it, you know, past traumas, programs, patternings, but patterns that might be inherited from others, that just get in the way, build the ego, and people just simply, uh, not being who they are because of these programs, but actually being able to just get rid of those shackles, and not being caught in the act, just allowing all these worries in, such as what I call letting in the what ifs. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
what if it didn't, or what if it did? Or maybe the opposite of what they expected. And rather than, and then of course we know that clinically as anxiety, so, and not asking your true self, what do they, or my clients, say, well, what do they really want in any given situation? What would they want? Not being able to receive opportunities, compliments, people not receiving compliments because of fear of, what people might think, just because of some program they've had of not feeling good enough or acting upon moving towards the things they would love. Then they create a lot of bad choices in their life, which, you start seeking answers, into sort of things that you into where you don't want, what you don't want to feel, start framing it all negatively. I just think it's really time for us to look inward at what the heart actually really wants, and you know just quieten the noise of some of that. It doesn't matter what you don't want. Go
Yeah.
for what you do want. I mean, creativity, and I think this is the musical connection for me, is
Yeah.
creativity is something that I believe heals and nurtures you, and it kind of gets you into the right space of where you can start making things up. If you're going to make it up that everything in the world is negative, you may as well make up that the world is actually positive and can do something good. Because most of the time we don't know the answer,
No,
you know.
no,
And
no.
if you can't, and you find you are too much going down the negative hole, then yes, find a good teacher, find a coach, find a mentor,
Mhm.
a good
Mm.
friend who maybe can just knock you back onto your axis so that your
Yeah.
world can spin around in a
Mm.
more positive way, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, that is awesome. I mean, I could hear you say the lack of understanding ourselves, and
Mm,
very often is missing. Because
mm,
when we understand ourselves and we are clear of what we want, although we don't live in isolation. So of course, the next person presence will impact on us. But
mm.
knowing who you are and knowing what you are made of is quite key for many of us. And hence that is what it is led to what you are doing. I am doing to tease out the best of people. And of course, it's not we haven't learned it overnight, but we've learned that being yourself, knowing who you are, and they talked about strength and weaknesses. Now I'm saying the areas for development, and I like the way you put it that many of us are we've set unrealistic expectations for ourselves
Mm.
rather than saying and thinking about external validation. So those things are really key, and knowing that we are worthwhile. We can live authentically with our loved ones, with the world that we are part of. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think this needs more unpacking. We need more time to unpack, but given the time, at least our listeners and audience will take something away. And so the area that I want us to touch on is about intentionality. How do you
Of course.
think? We've talked a bit about authenticity, but being intentional, how do you think it plays in your service to entrepreneurs to overcome these patterns that you've highlighted, some of the limiting beliefs themselves, understanding themselves, and leads to behavior, certain behaviors that are not serving us? How do you
Mm.
think intentionality play?
I think I think intentionality is absolutely critical. I mean, I suppose two main areas that I address when I in my coaching, whether it's mentoring, whether it's therapeutic sessions, are I see the areas in life where people are, not feeling good enough or not deserving of love. If you don't feel good enough, you're not going to take those opportunities. You're not even going to see them. You're not going to be able to move forward in life, or you're going to be pushing forward with willpower on someone else's steam until you burn out because you're not doing it again, there's no authenticity
No.
to that.
You know.
But we all have to survive. Sometimes we don't feel good enough, and sometimes, you hear "fake it till you make it," which of course can
Yeah.
get people started. But if
Yeah.
you don't quickly get to do it and do it with your feet on the ground, eventually
Mm.
you're going to get rumbled. You're going to crash.
Mm.
So it's sort of, and they're not deserving of love is a big one for me because, if you can't, if you not don't feel deserving of love, obviously then you're not lovable. So again,
No.
it will permeate into your relationships. Obviously, whether it's romantic or in
Mm.
business, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't feel like you have that deserving. So with my clients, I have what's known as the 4 E's. So I do,
Mm.
so we do evaluate, which we touched on, Gifty, because you mentioned about
Mm.
values, and it's one of the
Mm.
first things I take a lot of my clients through is
Mm.
just because most of the time I see barriers arise when people are not intentionally aligned with their with their values and their personal values, and sometimes that's because they've never asked themselves what are their values. So of course it's really important that if someone says that they want to, have a lot of money, let's say, they might have a value that money is evil, the root of all evil. Well, money is just in exchange for energy, and we can interpret it in any way we like. We can demonize it, or we can make it amazingly angelic. But in reality, it's just a tool. Just
Yeah.
and it's not it go back to this ism. It is. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And so when we interrogate people's values, suddenly we find that they've dialed down their money sort of thing because they want to play small on that. And of course, then they're wondering why their business isn't bringing money in because
Yeah.
they're not calling it in. They're not asking.
Mm.
They're actually pushing it away. So we have to ensure that when the values are aligned, not only personally, but also within business, uh,
Mm.
congruent, then you find that everything it increases the confidence, the motivation, and reduces any inner conflict that
Mm.
allows those sort of things. And then, of course, the next thing after evaluate, which is the values part that I do, the next E that I have on the list is ego. Of
Mm.
course, I don't demonize the ego. The ego is not your
Mm.
enemy. It's just a tool
No.
for awareness and self growth. I call it egolution. So,
Okay. Wow. It's a big
uh,
word.
so you want to evolve,
Mm.
and my clients have what's called the real story release. And entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs always have self-doubt and they have fear of
Yeah.
failure,
Mm.
sometimes they lack focus, a bit like creatives. They'll always look for the next cool new thing, and sometimes the task in hand may or may not get done. Sometimes they will also go completely myopically straight into that thing, and they won't even see other things failing around them. So
Mm.
lots of people in business, they might dive into
Mm.
their business is super
Mm.
successful,
Mm.
and then suddenly maybe their marriage fails or something happens because they take their eye off the ball of life. So we have to make sure that the values and that the ego, and there's an intentional and a true understanding of the patterns that
Mm.
govern the ego, especially in times of stress. And obviously, entrepreneurs have a lot of stress. They're trying to
Mm.
build a rocket, and a lot of the time they're trying to build a rocket on the way down, or build a parachute on the way down, or whatever the analogy you want to use. They're trying to sort of do this with little money normally, and getting them to really get rid of any distractions, prioritizing what truly matters, clearing their vision so that
Mm.
their goals can actually meet their values perfectly and align. And that then gets rid of not all uncertainties, because of course a lot of entrepreneurs are going into uncharted water and creating amazingly new things, but it does clear the uncertainties that are unnecessary, the uncertain fears and things around some of the things that we can control. And then of course, we need to evolve that into shifting
Mm.
mindset and making
Mm.
sure that there's no imposter syndrome. There's a typical barriers that you get, or negative self-talk. We touched on that,
Mm.
the negative things. And my clients learn to sort of reframe. They tend to reframe a lot of the stuff. And I use a sort of what's called the truth transformer, and that's effectively that goes in and that sort of identifies the lessons and learnings, whether it's through trauma, whether it's through just failing at business, or moving forward. I'd like to sort of see that all of this stuff is a chance to rewrite and rewire each story as an empowering story, to say what's learned, what is the learning, what is the growth, what can we focus on, the stories of resilience, and then we allow them to intentionally cultivate confidence and optimism via that, because you've removed some of the things that are a bit frightening. So therefore, they can suddenly fly over the top of, all of this with confidence, because they've kind of got their foundation sorted. Um, and the last E that I have in the program that I do, and I call this, and again I get quite spiritual with this. I call it soul shine impact. Um, and that's and for me, that's where you want to make a difference. That's where you want to give back, but that's where life should become a little bit more effortless. You're using sort of consistent intentional action. I mean, success, I think, requires always constant effort over time, but intentionally sort of helping entrepreneurs to embrace sort of, I guess, a more of a learning orientated mindset, and committing to positive daily habits. So a bit like in the self-help communities and various things, people might do things like journaling, people might do things like meditation. A lot of entrepreneurs, when they have some of these things added to their already skill set, it diffuses the bomb of burnout, that they might have. It sort of allows them to align their values and removes all the friction to maybe their daily lives. It also shows them, actually, if your value is your relationship and your family at home, and that's really high up, then your business needs to sort of sit somewhere in your life where it's not going to compromise that, and you're not just going to be all or nothing and everything else falls by the wayside. And I think, when sort of faced with these sort of internal resistance, they can sort of intentionally seek out, if it's something they can't resolve themselves through their own internal sort of introspection, then I suppose they could sort of intentionally seek out mentors. They can look at resources or get feedback. That feedback to continue grow, and I call it sort of falling upwards.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. That is awesome because somebody said, if you want to fail, fail forward. Don't go
Yeah,
backwards.
yeah,
And yours is falling
exactly.
upward. I love the four E's, the evaluation, ego, and evolve. The last one, the soul shining. What is the last E, please?
That was effortless.
Effortless. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
And I love you touch on something that you remind entrepreneurs to be mindful of, because when you start in a area of business, you want to complete everything at a time. But what I heard you say, have a good, decent plan, be consistent in your progress made, and then, of course, pick up these areas you want to improve and add to it. Make it achievable, which is very, very important because,
Yeah.
and that needs a coach like you or a mentor to hold them accountable.
That's right. I mean,
And
if
so,
you want to, if you sorry, Gifty, if you want to build your body, you go to a PT, don't you? And they'll
mm,
tell you what to eat. They'll tell you how to do it. And it might be that you've seen it 1,000 times on the internet, but
mm,
will you do it?
mm,
how,
mm,
how many
mm.
times have you read what to do and not done it? You know.
Not, yeah.
So,
So what you're
so
saying, knowledge is not, doesn't always translate into
yeah.
action, which we God help us to start doing. And hence that is why you're sharing these nuggets of wisdom. And I think even though time is short, we probably have to do more of these to go into deeper. I like the framework that you've got. What would be one of the takeaway or word of advice to someone who feels stuck in moving forward in their mindset, in the way of empowering themselves to even to seek help and follow their passion
Mhm.
intentionally. Just a
Yeah.
word to our listeners, and then we can run it off. Mm,
Sure. Well, I think that when people get stuck, I mean, I like to sort of I like to consider there's no such thing as the perfect situation. because I don't think we can think of everything. And if we and because we can't think of everything, then we can't make everything perfect.
No.
So it
Mm,
might be, perfect in the eyes of God. It might be perfect in the eyes of, the beholder. But the
mm,
reality is we can't think of everything. So we can't
no.
we personally can't make everything perfect. So we can release
No.
ourselves of that. And
Mm,
if we just start our journey, take some massive action, create some good results, succeed, just through learning,
mm,
as I've mentioned before, just learn by falling upwards, if you just keep going,
yes.
it's you just success and healing just will occur,
Mm,
when we create our vision, I suppose, and really, really go for it with absolutely all of our being, model people who have done what you want to do. We all read inspiring stories. We've all got heroes.
mhm,
Just learn more about how they did it. That
yes.
sort of thing. Just follow in the footsteps of giants. Don't try and do it all yourself. Don't try
Mm,
and think that you can get everything right. I think release yourself from all of that now.
yeah.
And
Mm,
and final note, I guess, on this is perspective. Pers- you
mm,
know, Perspective is key. Now we- you know, we've all got perception. We perceive this,
mm,
we perceive that. That's just our judgment.
yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
don't mix
Mm,
that up with
mm,
perspective. Where
perspective.
do you Perspective is what is the results that come back to you. So
Mm,
that could be the feedback from your clients. That could be the feedback
mm,
from a product launch that only sells three things when you had 300 things to sell. But it's sort of, why didn't that sell? Get perspective. Perspective allows you to learn incredibly fast, and also from these other people who've done things before, or
mm,
mentors or teachers, that perspective is something that will turbocharge times 10,
mm,
your value, and also the time scale, the time frame.
mm,
If someone's already done it, you don't need to spend 6 years in R&D when they can say, just do it this way. There's no point
mm,
in trying to
mm,
invent how to make
mm,
bread. Just go and get a
mm,
recipe. There's 1,000
mm,
recipes,
mm,
and start making a few of them. And you've
mm,
already saved yourself thousands of
yeah.
years from when the
Mm,
first people
mm,
were beating
mm,
grass on with a rock.
mm.
You don't need to start again.
Yeah.
Don't reinvent the wheel.
No, no, that is very true. And I think that really fits well. I hope our listeners are taking on board what you're sharing. And it's truly an inspiring way of, breaking down what how to live intentionally and authentically to enjoy life, basically. Enjoy
Yeah.
what God has blessed us. And to summarize, I believe you're telling all of us how to embrace, positivity, creativity, positive mindset, and be intentional to do it, drip, drip, and be consistent. I think those are powerful things that I hope my audience and our listeners are taking on board. Plus myself, making sure because and staying true to what you want so that you don't get deviated easily or be blown away and fail upward. And that is amazing. Oh, I wish we could go on and on. So thank you so much. And this is really
Thank you.
your story and your journey, and is truly a beacon to helping all the entrepreneurs that you may come across. And just quickly to share, how can you be connected with? How can our listeners connect with you since you are already well established in your, and then I can add it up when I run it up, please.
Oh, yes. Thanks, Gifty. Yes, so you can connect with me either via my website, which is sarahtuning.com,
Yeah.
or I'm on LinkedIn, so you can find me
Okay.
there. I'm on
Mm.
Facebook as well.
Oh,
So,
wow.
but Sarah Tuning, you can find me. I mean, on LinkedIn and Facebook, I'm under
Yeah.
my name, James
Okay.
Wilkinson. But Sarah Tuning, you
Mm.
can find .com. You can find me, and if anyone needs help or that sort of thing, you can book a 20-minute free call with me.
Okay.
I'm always interested to chat with people. I will find time and see where I can help where I can.
Yeah, thank you so much. For our listeners, thank you for tuning in. I've been on the website and wealth of knowledge and what do you call it? Testimonials as well for you to relate to. So please don't hesitate to connect with our guest today, James Wilkinson. And when I run it off you, I'll give you all the details attached to it. Thank you so much. And James, is a joy. Thank you for your sharing your hearts in such a powerful way. I appreciate that. And we'll keep on. I hope we have a second episode. Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you
Thank you,
for our
Gifty.
listeners. Keep on shining as a beacon until our next episode. Take care. Bye bye. Thank
All
you.
right.